All right, seventh grade. Today we are on chapter 6.2, day 2 of notes. And before we get started, I just want to do a quick review to make sure we remember all of our angles. First angle is a right angle, which, if we remember, is complementary. And complementary angles are 90 degrees. Second kind of angle that we talked about was supplementary. Oops, bumped the camera. Supplementary angles. And supplementary angles add up to 180 degrees. They're straight lines. Remember, we talked about yesterday always looking for straight lines when we're trying to figure out missing angles. So if I were to do this, obviously not drawn to scale, if this is 80 degrees and this is x, I know that x is 100 degrees because 180 minus 80 leaves me 100 degrees left over. And then the other thing we talked about yesterday is angles at a point. So let's see if I can draw something that looks like this. Okay, we have a bunch of angles here. Angle 1, angle 2, angle 3, angle 4, and angle 5. And if we were to add up all these angles, we would get 360 degrees. From here all the way to here is 360 degrees. So that's kind of our quick review on the last couple days. Now, today we're going to talk about vertical angles. And we kind of started talking about that yesterday, where I said to look for an X. So if I drew some angles here, created by an X, okay, created by an X. And if I said that this was angle A, B, C, and D, okay? So those are my angles. These are vertical angles. We talked yesterday how vertical angles are equal to each other. So I could say that angle A equals angle C, and that means also that angle B is the same as angle D. So whenever we're finding missing angles in a problem, always look for X's, because we just look straight across to find an angle that's missing, but also look for straight lines. Look for those 180 degrees. All right, so let's do a quick example here on how we can use vertical angles to solve some of these problems. So this is what I've got here. And angle A, sometimes they will do this. You'll see this in your book. Angle A is 2x, and angle B is 60 degrees. Okay? Now, I know that these two things are vertical angles, so I know that they do what? They equal each other. They are the same. Okay? So this has to equal this because they're opposite of this x. So I can solve for x, divide, and I know that x equals 30, which makes sense, right? Because 30 times 2 is 60. So it's 60 and 60. I know that I got it right. I can use that to help me out. All right, right now I want you to pause the video, and turn to page 27 in your books. Page 27, we're going to do a few examples. So turn to page 27. Well, I turn my page. All right. All right, we all should be on page 27. We're looking at example number 5. Okay. And you can see on example 5 that we have an X there. And it says that this is 120 degrees, and this is 3y degrees. Now, I see this X, and in your homework, if you need to draw the pictures of it and trace the straight lines or trace an X, get out a highlighter if that's helpful. Sometimes that's easier for some people to see those X's. And I know that opposite vertical angles are equal, so I'm going to make these equal to each other. And just like we did on that last problem, I'm going to solve for y, divide by 3, and I get that y is 40. And 40 times 3 is 120, so I know I got it right, because this should be 120 degrees. All right, let's look at example 6. Okay, so I want you to pause the video for a second and either copy it down so you can draw on it, or just kind of look in your book. I'm going to write these down here. Angle 2 is R degrees. Angle 3 is Q degrees. And angle 4 is P degrees. And we have to figure out what is angle P, what is angle P, what is angle Q, and what is angle R equal. And all we know is 114 degrees. So the first thing I want to see right away is, oh, look at this. I have an X. So I know vertical angles are equal. So right away, without even trying very hard, I can look across my X and know that Q has to be 114 degrees. Has to be. Now, after that, I go, well, how do I figure out these? I don't know what they are. But what I do see is a straight line. And you can use a Post-it to help you, but I see a straight line. This goes back to the second day of this unit, where I know that a straight line has to be 180 degrees, which means R plus 114 has to equal 180 degrees. It just has to. And if I subtract 114 from both sides, that means that R is going to be what? 66 degrees, right? Now, for my last one, I have two options. I can make this a straight line and do the same thing, right? P plus 114 equals 180. Or I know that this is 66 degrees, so I know whatever's across from the X has to also be 66 degrees. So that is how I would solve that. Whenever I have any X, if I know one of the angle measurements, I can very easily find all the other ones. All right, this one is not in your notes or not in your book, but we're going to try to draw this. So I'm going to draw it, and then I want you to pause your video and draw it to make sure you've got it. So I have this X here, and I got a line going through the middle of it. This angle is 102 degrees. This angle is X degrees. This angle is Y. And this angle right here is 20 degrees. So I need to figure out what is X and what is angle Y. What do those equal? Okay. Move my book over so you can see a little bit here. All right. So the first thing I want to look at is, do I see any X's? Well, yes, I do. I see an X right here. And that helps me because if I see this X and say I cover this up so I can't see the rest of it, this is across from each other. So Y has to be 102 degrees. Okay, so this has to be 102. Okay. Now, how do I find X? Well, I have two options. Two options for finding X. I could possibly do, let's see here. Well, no, actually, I want to do it this way. This would be the easiest way. I'm going to look and find a different X. Here's an X here. Does everyone see that second X? So if I have that second X there, I know that whatever's across has to be 20 degrees. So I now know that this is 20 degrees, right? Because I looked across from a second X. Use different color highlighters if you need to. That's okay to do that. All right. All right, one more example. This one's a little trickier. So pause your video after you copy, or after I draw this angles. Stop your video, and because this one's a little trickier to draw. So here we go here. All right, so this here is angle Y. This here is 70 degrees. So this one's 70 degrees. This one is Z degrees. That's Z. And then this is 2x. And this one is also 2x degrees. All right, so pause your video and write that down so we can solve this one together. All right, you should have, pause your video, you should have this drawn in your notebook somewhere. And grab yourself a Post-it too, because this one, a Post-it might be a little easier to visualize. Might be a little easy. Because the first thing I see is this straight line right here. That's the first thing I want to focus on, because I see a straight line. And I also see two things on here like this. That looks very similar to what we did the first day, right? So I can do 70 plus y. What does it have to equal if it's a straight line? It has to equal 180 degrees, right? So if I subtract 70 from both sides, I'm going to get y to equal 110 degrees. So I can put that in here, 110 degrees. Is what my y is equal to. All right, that was the easy one to do. Now let's look at this mess over here. This is kind of messy here, but I do see another straight line here. I see another straight line. So I'm going to cover up with my Post-it this part. And I have 2x, and I now know this is 110. So 2x and 110. What is 2x plus 110 have to equal if it's a straight line? Well, it has to equal 180 degrees, right? 180. So if I'm doing this, okay, and I subtract 110 from both sides, I'm going to get 2x to equal 70. Divide by 2, divide by 2. And I'm going to get that x equals 35. So now I know that x equals 35. Okay. All right. And if I were to put this up here and figure out what this angle measurement is, it's 2 times 35. Well, what's 2 times 35? Well, that's 70. Right? 70 degrees. So now we have this one is 70, this is 110, this one is 70. So now we have two more angles to figure out. Well, this one's easy, right? This one's easy because we know that x is 35. So what's 2 times x? 2 times 35 is, here's another 70 degrees. So now we have this poor little z left. Two ways we can do this. Two ways we can do this. First way that we could do this is we can look at this straight line here. I know a straight line is 180 degrees. I know this is 70 plus another 70 plus z has to equal 180 degrees. So if I add these together, I get 140 plus z equals 180 minus 140 from both sides. And I'm going to get that z is equal to 40 degrees. So I can write that in there. The other way you could have done that problem, depending on what you want to do, is looking at the angles you know, right? I know that all of these should add up to 360. So I could have done 360 minus 70, minus 70, minus 110, minus 70. And what will that give me? Well, it should give me 40 if I did it right. Okay? So in your homework today, you're going to be doing a bunch of these types of problems where you have to kind of look at the angles and try to figure those out. Make sure you're looking at x's. Make sure you're getting a Post-it and looking at those straight lines so you can subtract things from 180. Maybe there'll be a 90-degree angle in there somewhere. Then you know it's going to equal 90. But look at all those different things to help you solve those problems.